Welcome. It's wonderful to be able to do this with you, and we'll start off with our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. So we are continuing with some very interesting laws. And we've been talking about situations where there's an improper carnal relationship. And we're on to another example now. Ki yimtsa ish na'ara betula asher lo orasa. So just to translate this, if a man happens upon or finds literally, right, a maiden, a virgin, asher lo orasa, who is not betrothed. Remember, we have been talking about situations where this person, this na'ara, this young woman from the age of 12 and 12 and a half, as the halacha, the applied halacha defines it, but she's not betrothed. She is pnuya is the word we'd use. Vutefasa, and he grabbed hold of her, the shachav ima, and he lay with her. The nimtsa'u, and they were discovered. They were discovered. Let's take a look. No Rashi's on this. So the issue is, it sounds as if it is maybe against her will. I don't know if it definitely implies that, or does it simply describe a little bit more the act? But I do think it covers a situation where she might have been unwilling, but I'm not certain. I'm not certain. This word utfasa is the one that is raising issues for me. So I'm looking to see. Nothing in the Torah Tmima about that. What are the consequences? V'natan ha'ish hashochev ima la'avi hanara. The man who lay with her shall give to the father of the maiden, of the na'ara, chamishim kasef, 50 pieces of silver, v'lo tiyeh leisha, and to him, that is to this man, she shall become a wife. She shall become his wife. Tachat asher ina, because he has humiliated her, something like that. Lo yuchal shalcha kol yamav, he will not be able, he was not going to be in a position to divorce her all the days. He will never have the right of divorcing her. And of course, this does raise all kinds of questions in terms of the application. And truthfully, in order to understand this law, one has to delve into the oral law and to see if one can get a better sense of how this is applied. Because the first question is, certainly if this was against her will, she would never want, I would think she would never want to become his wife. And that's exactly why I don't want to take that utafasa as necessarily meaning that he was raping her. I cannot imagine the Torah suggesting this relationship in a case of rape. The utafasa could certainly have to do with trying to go into seclusion with her. It might have that meaning. Ina, again, is a word that I have to tell you is sometimes used in connection with rape. And it does say, let me find it, because it does say asher ina, right? So it's got this word here, right? And it could be, and I'm looking at the Aramaic, and I'm not sure that the Aramaic clarifies it, but I believe the way it's understood is that he has now made her of less value, because the bride price for a virgin was double the bride price of a woman who was not a virgin. And it could be referring, it makes a lot of sense in a way to say that the inah here, right, is that he has lowered her status, and that's the way to be understood here. And I'm not saying that this doesn't still leave a lot of problems. I don't want to paste over that idea, but at least I think it takes it away from a different situation altogether. And it says he will not be able to divorce her. So the question then still leaves open, and I would hope that the Gemara and the oral law would deal with this, is that if she is not willing, then she doesn't have to marry this man. And I think that's quite probably the case here, is that if in fact she does want to marry her, marry him, excuse me, that he will not ever be able to divorce her. So it still leaves a lot of room for a consensual relationship, but it also says that there are serious ramifications to what he's done. So this all could be consensual, but essentially it's saying, nevertheless, it's something that has consequences. All right. Going on. Lo yikach ish et eshet aviv. So in this connection, it goes into something else, because it is talking about marriage here. And it says, a man should not take the wife of his father. Velo yigale knaf aviv, and nor should he expose. Literally, I'm translating this, although I believe it's actually Rashi is going to explain what this means. He shall not expose the skirt of his father. Again, we can't take that literally. We have to understand that as being an expression referencing something else. And hopefully Rashi is going to explain that for us. So in the case of, in other words, so it's saying in simple words that a man is not allowed to marry his father's wife. Now, in the case of it being his mother, there's no question about it. And these laws are mentioned elsewhere. But it's also the fact that his father may have taken another woman, either in cases where polygamy was permitted, or it also could be a situation where his mother died and his father married another woman. And the point is that he is not allowed, assuming that his father either divorces or passes away, he is never allowed to marry this woman. So it doesn't say his mother, right? It says his father's wife, the language there. So, lo yikach, he shall not take, right? And in saying he shall not take, right? Rashi is saying, ein lo ba likuchim. There is no legal justification, or maybe justification is the wrong word, but there is no legal status to this act of acquiring this woman. For ein kiddushin tofsin ba, and we're saying here that the whole marriage status does not apply in this particular case. So two issues going on here. One is that it's the actual act of acquisition. There is no validity to that whatsoever. And also to suggest, even if he goes ahead and he does that, it's not a situation where it's considered a legal marriage. Going on. Lo yigalek nafaviv. So here Rashi is explaining this expression of he shall not expose his father's skirt. And this is quoting from the tractate Yevamot, page 33 in the Talmud. So they say this is referring, or can be referring to, Shomeret Yavam Shel Aviv, referring to now, this would be his brother's wife. His brother's wife. And the idea is that if his brother were to die without having children, right? This is the Shomeret Yavam, that wife would now fall to his father to perform a levirate marriage. And this would, of course, there might be situations where it could even happen today, in the sense that if this person's mother had passed away and his father was now single, and the brother then also passed away without children, this woman now would fall to his father as a yivama under the laws of levirate marriage. So it says, Hari'uya la'aviv. In other words, the reason why we're using the term aviv, his father, is because she would be appropriate for his father. The tractate Yevamot actually deals with all those relationships where the levirate situation would actually not adhere whatsoever. It also discusses the fact that there is an authority by the name of Abba Shahu, who basically says this never should really take place, who's opposed to who says that the levirate situation has to take place without any personal gratification whatsoever. And since that's pretty much impossible, it's preferable, since there is a way out of it. We know that there's chalitza, right, where the surviving brother says that he does not want to perform this ceremony. That's what should be done. At any rate, v'harei kfar huzhar. So Rashi goes on to make another point. V'harei kfar huzar haleha. He says that in fact this particular case has already been mentioned. In other words, it's not a new situation here. And he's saying back in, if we look at the situation of Mishum Ervat Achi Avicha, right, in Leviticus chapter 18, it talks about the fact that your brothers, your father's brothers, literally it means nakedness, but we're talking about his wife, okay? That you are not allowed to marry your father's brother's wife. And here we're talking about that exact situation. So it's already been prohibited. It's already been prohibited. So why is it being mentioned again? Ela la'avor al zeh b'shnei lavim. The idea is that if one in fact does such a thing, one has contravened two negative commandments. Okay, in other words, the negative commandment mentioned here and the negative commandment mentioned back in Leviticus. Ulismoch la lo yavor, and in order to connect the very, what's going to come up very, very soon, there's going to be a law saying lo yavor mamzer, the law that a mamzer, right, an illegitimate child is not, or an illegitimate son is not supposed to marry, cannot marry an Israelite woman. That we're going to discuss that in more detail when we actually get to that particular passage very, very soon. Lelamed, to teach us regarding she'ein mamzer, so that when it comes to the law regarding the mamzer, ein mamzer ela mechayve kvitut, to teach you that in defining what we mean by a mamzer, we're talking about the offspring of a relationship where the penalty would be karet. That's a divine punishment, and exactly what it means in terms of practicalities. There's an understanding that it means premature death, possibly. It's all done, though, at the hands of heaven. This is not a court-imposed punishment. It literally means cutting off, all right, and exactly what that means possibly is discussed elsewhere. It's not a clear a sentence. It's not a clear a definition of what karet means, other than it is a divine punishment, and it's a very serious divine punishment, that we do know. The kal vachomer, and all the more so, mechayve mitot beit din, that if in fact this child is the product of a relationship where a court is required to sentence a person with capital punishment, okay, assuming all the necessary evidence, etc., or circumstances, that if in fact it is also punishable by a court, then she'ein ba'arayot. So he's saying that in fact that is the case, that there's a child born of that relationship. That child is also a mamzer. And he's going to tell us, Rashi is going to tell us, she'ein ba'arayot mitat beitin, because when it comes to these consanguineous relationships that we're talking about, the whole subject of forbidden unions comes under the title of erva arayot, right? That if a court is supposed to sentence this, comes under a court, she'ein ba karet, that he's saying to this that even in a situation where a court is obligated to punish a person with capital punishment, along with that is also the law of karet, meaning that if there wasn't sufficient evidence and for some reason the trial could not come to a conclusion regarding as to the guilt of that individual, the guilt of that person would be held under karet. In other words, at that point, it would be up to heaven to determine the punishment of that person. So he's saying that even that there's no distinction here, and that it teaches you that in those circumstances, the offspring is defined as a mamzer. I will tell you that there is discussion in the Talmud as to whether or not, what is exactly the definition and what is the nature of that relationship where the child is considered illegitimate. Incidentally, it is interesting that the English definition of an illegitimate child is different from the Torah's definition. So, going on, new thought. These are all sort of connected in a way, right? Because they have to do with procreation. Lo yavo patsua daka. So, what this is referring to, Rashi's going to help us understand this, but essentially it's talking about someone whose testes are injured in some way, right? So a person whose testes are injured, ucharut shofcha, or has his member cut off, that it's not he doesn't have a complete member, Bikal Adonai shall not come into the congregation of the Lord. Again, a lot of terse words here, which Rashi has to explain for us if we're to even understand them and give them an interpretation. So, going into the Rashi, Patsua Daka, this expression Patsua Daka, what is this referring to? So, again, taken from the tractate Yevamot, Sheniftza'u, in other words, either split, injured, or shenitka'u, or crushed. Beitzim shelo, literally it means his eggs, and what it means, of course, is his testicles. V'charut shofcha, shenichrat hagid. So hagid literally means the muscle, but it is talking about the penis. Okay, so it's saying if the penis is cut in some way, Veshuv eino yoreh kiluach zera, so that he is not able to, in fact, send a stream of seed. He's not able to, literally, yoreh means to shoot, right? Shoot a stream of seed, of semen. Ella shofech, but rather shofech, it just pours out veshotet and flows gently, ve'eino molid, so that he is not capable of siring, of fertilizing or getting a woman pregnant. So it's saying, and again, what it means by, we'll do the next one, and that'll explain what do we mean into the congregation of the Lord. What do we mean? So, lo yavo mamzer bikal Adonai. So here we have that law regarding the mamzer, right? A mamzer shall not enter the congregation of the Lord. I'll just finish the sentence. Gam dor asiri, even the 10th generation. Lo yavo lo bikal Hashem. He shall not be able to enter the community, the congregation of the Lord. So lots of stuff to explain, but let's see. So what do we mean? Lo yisa Israelite. He is not allowed to marry an Israelite woman. So this person that we mentioned in verse 2 is not allowed. We use this expression, and this expression is understood to refer to marrying a woman, an Israelite woman. So it means a woman who is born of an Israelite. Okay, so that, in other words, what choices do they have? Certainly someone who was not born an Israelite, but then takes on the practices of an Israelite. So in other words, a proselyte. This person is permitted to marry a proselyte. And in fact, it's mentioned as to how, even though it says up until the 10th generation, how the person can become, that even if they aren't legitimate, their offspring subsequently can become legitimate. So that's discussed elsewhere. And I think with this, unless there are any questions for the record, we will stop here for today. Any questions?
Yeah, the question about the brothers.
Yes.
When one brother dies and leaves no son,
Right.
the other brother
No children. No children. Yeah, I believe. Yeah.
So then, wife, he's obligated to marry the brother's wife.
Yes.
If he doesn't want to do that, what happens?
So there is a ceremony called chalitza, where she comes before him, and he says in front of a court that he does not wish to do this. She removes his shoe. There's a special shoe that is placed on his foot. She removes that shoe in the presence of the court. She spits in his presence, okay, on the ground in his presence, and says, that this is what is done to someone who does not want to build up his brother's house, his deceased brother's house. So, the Torah clearly feels the need to support family in this way, at any rate. But nevertheless, the very fact that there is a way out, I think, is extremely significant. And so basically, this levirate marriage, it's called a levirate marriage, does not take place these days. I'm not sure if there are any communities where perhaps it does, but as I said, generally speaking, the Talmud is against these kinds of marriages. And it's interesting because under normal circumstances, you're never allowed to marry your brother's wife, even if everything else is, So for example, if your brother divorces this woman, you're single, and I'm talking about if it could happen today, you're single, your brother divorces his wife, you're not allowed to marry her under normal circumstances, unless this particular situation occurs where they have no children. It's because the Torah actually in another place says you're forbidden to marry your brother's wife. So, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't understand the 10 generations. Why should they be responsible for what happened?
Again, this comes under something that requires us to understand the deep implications of our behavior and the degree to which other people are affected by our personal behavior, and that it can have long-standing, consequences, and that possibly, this is the best explanation I can give, and that possibly if we were to take that to heart, it might prevent us from committing some really bad mistakes. To know that we have to understand that we never act, we're not an island, okay? We can't just act for ourselves and think that it doesn't affect other people. My dad used to share, my late father, blessed memory, used to share a story, a midrash he had read about a man who's in a boat. Imagine it's a small little boat with other people in it, and he's drilling a hole under his seat. He's got his seat in the boat, and he's drilling a hole in his seat. And people are saying to him, wait a second, the whole boat's going to sink because you're drilling a hole underneath your seat. And the man says to him, excuse me, it's my seat. I'm drilling a hole under it. It's my seat. That's the attitude of someone who doesn't recognize that what they do, which is criminal or bad like that, actually affects the whole society. And that possibly, if we really took that to heart, we'd think twice about some of the decisions we make. So,
Yeah.
on that happy note, I'm going to stop the recording.